With the 2022 schedule now released, it's time to consider what the biggest challenge each team presents for the Buffalo Bills today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Well, today on the podcast, we are going to take a deeper look at the schedule. On Friday last week, we broke that thing down from every angle, talked about the layout of the schedule and the challenges that the schedule itself presents to the Bills. Today, I want to go even deeper and look at each team. And not that I want to break down every team that the Bills play. We'll do that the week before the game happens. But what I do want to do today is identify the biggest challenge that each team presents for the Buffalo Bills. And then what aspect of the Bills team is tasked with meeting that challenge? What on the Bills team is the onus on to deal with the biggest challenge that each team presents, the biggest challenge that each team presents for the Buffalo Bills? And through this, because I've already done it in preparation of delivering this podcast, it's quite revealing as to what components of the Bills football team are going to be in the spotlight to meet the biggest challenges of the season. Now, this goes without saying that Josh Allen is the biggest answer that the Bills always have. When teams or other fans or whatever would be doing the same experiment and getting to the Buffalo Bills, they're writing down Josh Allen. Well, that's a pretty big trump card. But let's examine these other teams that the Bills play this year and talk about what that biggest challenge that they present is. We'll work through the schedule in order of game, and I think we'll get to an interesting conclusion here. So week one, the Bills go to the Rams. To me, their biggest challenge that the Rams pose to the Buffalo Bills is Aaron Donald, defensive tackle. An insanely good football player. I won't say probably. He's the best defensive player of this era of football. He's unreal. He's capable of taking over games. You saw it in the Super Bowl. He made the big plays when things mattered most, because he always does. And so the onus is on the Bills' offensive line right off the bat. Welcome to the team, Roger Saffold. Hope you're enjoying your contract extension, Ryan Bates. Mitch Morse also a recent contract extension. Well, here's a big old challenge for you right off the bat in week one, Aaron Donald. That's the biggest challenge that the Rams present to the Buffalo Bills. Week two, the Tennessee Titans. The biggest challenge the Titans present to the Buffalo Bills is Derrick Henry in that rushing offense. It's their bread and butter. And the reason I said and the rushing offense is because Derrick Henry was injured last year, and the rushing offense really didn't take a step back, right? It was just as productive as it always has been, just with a different stable of running backs. Now, Derrick Henry is a dude, and that guy being on the field late in games to grind it out, that guy being fresh down the stretch to deal with late in the season, I mean, he's a load. We know that. But that's the biggest challenge. Their entire offense is built off their ability to run the football and use the play action game and use dump and run passes to create explosive plays. And defensively, they're okay. With Derrick Henry, the rushing offense, the biggest challenge. The onus is on the Bills' defensive front seven to deal with that. right? Defensive tackles, linebackers, defensive ends, the front 7 players on defense are the ones that can meet the biggest challenge that the Titans present to the Bills. Week 3 at the Miami Dolphins. The biggest challenge the Dolphins present to the Bills is speed at wide receiver. These guys are insanely fast. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, that's unbelievable speed. What's interesting is that the Bills, despite not having a very athletic secondary, they don't give up a lot of explosive plays down the field. In fact, teams really don't even challenge the Bills down the field. The average depth of target against the Bills defense year over year is very, very low. And I think that's a tribute to Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, their ability to function in deep alignments, their ability to work into throwing windows, their ability to stay leveraged over the top. I mean, it's not because the Bills have speed in the secondary that can turn and run with every receiver in the league, but they cap routes and they stay leveraged very well. Now, the tackling and yards after catch component is another story. But whether it is stressing the Bills' defense vertically or challenging the Bills' defense to make tackles against speedy receivers, speed at wide receiver in the form of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill is the biggest challenge the Miami Dolphins present to the Bills. And so I think the onus is on the entire defense because, yes, it is about your secondary and being able to cover and being able to tackle, but you can help that by getting home with your pass rush. And so it's not just the secondary, it's the rush as well. It's the entire defense working together to make sure that they don't have time to separate down the field. And throws have to come out even quicker than they want to because your rush is getting there. It's complementary defense in terms of your rush and your coverage. So I put the onus on the entire defense. Week 4, the Baltimore Ravens. Biggest challenge, Lamar Jackson. This guy has a lot of different ways that he can make you pay. He can run it. He can extend plays. He can throw it. Now, the Bills have had a pretty good amount of success against Lamar Jackson, and they do a good job of containing him and then forcing him to make throws outside the numbers, and they do a good job, but he's still a tough player to deal with. And you fundamentally have to change the way you play defense just to handle him. And so I think he's the biggest threat. I think the Ravens are a really good football team, and I think their defense is going to be really solid this year. They're getting a lot of players back healthy, a lot of new players added to the mix. They've found some answers for their offensive line. I think they're a really good football team, but Lamar Jackson is that piece of their football team that gives me the most concern and is the biggest challenge. I put the onus on the entire defense once again to deal with it. It's not just any one part of the defense, it's the entire thing. Being able to contain Lamar Jackson as best you can. In week 5, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the biggest challenge that the Steelers present for the Bills is this defensive line of TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Stefon Tuitt, Alex Highsmith. Those guys are dudes. Those guys are really good football players. We saw last year Cam Hayward and TJ Watt really give the Bills problems. And they're back. And they're really good. TJ Watt, we have 20-something sacks last year, the defensive player of the year. Guy's a problem. Be a big challenge for Spencer Brown. Cam Hayward, we've seen what this guy can do. Tuitt, if he's healthy, I mean, he's unbelievable as well. So who's the onus on to deal with those players? The O-line. The offensive line. Collectively as a group. Got to be able to meet that challenge or else the Steelers are going to make it a long day for you. We saw that in week 1 last year. Week 6 at the Chiefs. The biggest challenge you already know. It's Patrick Mahomes. Now, it's going to be interesting to see Patrick Mahomes this year without Tyreek Hill and how the lack of Tyreek Hill impacts the overall spacing of the offense. And, is there as much opportunity for Travis Kelce to work? It's going to be a different dynamic. But Pat Mahomes is a friggin' good player. We've seen him time and time again. what he can do in the NFL. He's the biggest challenge that the Chiefs present. Now, defensively, Kansas City's got some nice young players, but to me, it's Pat Mahomes. He's that guy. He's that dude. He's the best quarterback in the league, probably. And the onus is on your entire defense to have to deal with him. So through the first 6 games, the week 7's the bye, I have the onus being on the Bills' offensive line, defensive front 7, defense, offensive line, defense, just through the first 6 weeks. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's futures for the NFL. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. It's BetOnline, and it's where the game starts. All right, let's move on to the next chunk of games. We'll work through week 8 through 13 here in this segment. Again, week 7 being the bye. Week 8, the Packers, the biggest challenge is Aaron Rodgers. I think defensively that team's going to be pretty good. Obviously, Aaron Jones is an important component of their team, but I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's been the NFL MVP the last 2 seasons. He's that guy that you have to really be concerned with. Now, no Devontae Adams this year, who's been his go-to guy, and I don't think they really replaced him. So there's going to be a lot of stress on Aaron Rodgers himself to live up to his contract and elevate his supporting cast. But he's the biggest challenge that the Green Bay Packers present. And Rodgers is accurate, and he's good at throwing to all levels of the field, and he's got enough mobility to extend plays. He's a really good football player. Again, the MVP of the league the last 2 years. He's good. And so I put the onus on the entire defense once again to deal with him, because you need your secondary to be consistent and where they're supposed to be, or else he'll make you pay. And you need to be able to affect him with your rush. So to me, it's the entire defense here that the onus is on to deal with the Packers' biggest challenge, which is Aaron Rodgers. Next up, the New York Jets, week 9 at the Jets. The biggest challenge that the Jets pose to the Bills is the depth of their pass rush. You got a lot of guys that can rush the passer. Inside, Quinnen Williams, Sheldon Rankins, Solomon Thomas. On the edge, Carl Lawson's back. He's going to be healthy. Jermaine Johnson, one of their first-round picks. John Franklin Myers. You got a lot of players here that they can mix in and have the ability to rush the quarterback. And it's not that they have a dude, right? It's not like they have an Aaron Donald or a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett. They don't have that one player. But it's collectively having 6 players that are challenging to block. And if they can work together, they can present a lot of problems for your offensive line. So the onus is on the Bills' offensive line to deal with the Jets' biggest challenge, which is their overall depth of pass rushers, both inside and outside. Week 10, Minnesota Vikings. The biggest challenge that the Vikings present for the Bills is the combination of Dalvin Cook at running back and Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. I mean, Jefferson is versatile, wins to all levels of the field. He's a true number 1 receiver, has been unbelievably productive to start his career. Then you have Dalvin Cook, who is an outstanding running back with good vision, good speed, good contact balance. He thrives in those wide zone runs where he can find a crease, put his foot in the dirt, explode up the field, and create yards. And so you've got a dynamic running back to deal with. You got a dynamic receiver to deal with. The onus to me goes back to the entire defense. What can they do about these 2 players? How can they take them away, but also not let other guys like Adam Thielen, Irv Smith, they're ancillary components of the offense, don't let them beat you as well. So really good running back receiver tandem there in Cook and Jefferson, and it'll be on the Bills' defense to slow them down and give the Bills their best chance to win the football game. Number 11, the Cleveland Browns. To me, the biggest challenge that they present is their rushing offense. And I know that Deshaun Watson's their quarterback, and we'll see, right, like when he can play, how effective he is, right? There's questions there. And obviously, if Deshaun can refine his form, he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But with some questions there, I did want to pivot to the run game because Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, that offensive line, they can really wear you out. They can create space. They're very good at creating displacement in the run game, and having a guy like Nick Chubb running behind it, who's just a pro's pro as a pure runner, I mean, he's outstanding. And so that's what, to me, is the biggest challenge the Browns present. Now, they got Myles Garrett. They got good players on defense. But it's Nick Chubb in this run game right now. And I put the onus on the entire defense because it is a front seven thing for sure. But because Deshaun Watson's their quarterback, I think it becomes an entire defensive problem because Deshaun can access the entire field and put stress on the entire field. And, if they get a complimentary situation here where their run game is as good as it's always been, and now they have the best passing components that they've ever had with Watson and Amari Cooper there now at wide receiver and some good tight ends and Donovan Peoples-Jones who's emerging, they can really bring a lot of problems to you. So I put the onus on the entire defense. Week 12, the Detroit Lions, Thanksgiving, Thursday night. Here's the thing about the Detroit Lions. I don't think you're going to look at their roster and say, oh my goodness, they have superstar players everywhere. But the way that they've built this team is they have really physical players in the trenches on both sides of the football, and they have this mantra of competitive toughness, right? And it stems from their head coach, Dan Campbell, who talks about wanting to bite kneecaps and be aggressive and, be physical and tough and competitive. And that shows up, right? His team takes on that identity. And so, no, it's not any one player on that team. It's becoming a much better roster here under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. But to me, it's just the competitive toughness. It's the way the Detroit Lions play football. They're a scrappy team. They're hungry. And, the dynamics of that game at Detroit, short week, their Super Bowl. I've said this before. And you combine that with a team that is just competitively tough, it's not an easy out at all. And so I think, to me, the challenge is the competitive toughness and meeting that moment, right? And not taking for granted that you're on the road against the Lions. They're not just going to give you the win because you showed up, because you're the good team that's been really good on Thanksgiving. You got to go take it to the Detroit Lions, who do not want to lose their Super Bowl at home. So to me, the onus is on the entire team. It's about the coaching staff setting the standard. It's about the leadership of the team. And it's being able to, not just match their intensity, but show up and prove that you are that dominant team and that, hey, you guys can try as hard as you want and compete and battle and be scrappy and get after us all you want. We're just a better football team. And so now we're more talented. We've got time on task together. But, hey, we're also physical and competitive, and you got to match us. So I put the onus on the entire team. And so kind of an interesting angle there, but I think it's the appropriate angle just based on this Detroit team and what we've learned about them. They weren't very good last year, but they deserve to have probably at least 4, 5, 6 more wins than they did. And I'm really interested to see how they evolve this year. Week 13 at the Patriots. Biggest challenge to me with the Patriots is that rush offense. We talked about this with Tennessee. Their rush offense is really the key to their operation. And they've got Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And, they lost Shaq Mason, but they still have Trent Brown and Isaiah Wynn up front and David Andrews, Michael Onwenu, who was a good player 2 years ago. They picked Cole Strange in the first round. So they've assembled this offensive line. They got the physical running backs, and we know that this is their bread and butter. They want to run the football. They need to run the football. They can't ask Mac Jones to go out there and throw it 35 times every week and win football games. They have to run it. And so if you can bottle up that rushing offense and force them to try to find other ways to create offense, or you get a lead on them and you force them out of that rush offense, that's where the Patriots struggled last year. So to me, it's about the defensive front seven. Get out there, be gap sound with your run defense, tackle, and take away that run game. That's who the onus is on to meet the Patriots' biggest challenge. Folks, I got to tell you about Built Bar, but I want to focus on the birthday cake puffs. I want to speak to you from my heart here. These things are so freaking good. Birthday cake puffs. It's covered in white chocolate. It's a puff, so it's the marshmallow protein bar, and they are absolutely delicious. And I got to be honest, when Built released the puffs, I was not even interested because I'm not really a marshmallow guy. But I tried them, and I'm glad I did because they are so good. They're delicious. It's literally a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar, and I can't even describe how good they taste. I'm addicted to these things, and they're healthy for you. You get 16 grams of protein, and they come in great flavors like, birthday cake. It's white chocolate with sprinkles. They've got churro. They've got banana cream, in addition to all the great protein bars that they already offer. So you got to try these things. I've been hyping them up. Try them for yourself. Go to Built.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, we got a few more games to get through, and then just kind of a recap here on who the onus is on to meet these big challenges. And we got 3 repeat teams here in the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots. So I won't over-elaborate on those. But the Jets, Week 14, again, the pass rush depth that we discussed, the onus is on the offensive line. Week 15, home against Miami, speed at receiver. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the onus is on the entire defense to tackle, stay leveraged, get home with your pass rush, right? All of those things. All right, now we're back to the teams we haven't discussed. Chicago Bears, Week 16, on the road. Now, the Bears, their situation's pretty rough. First-year coaching staff, first-year GM, second-year quarterback, and just the team is just not in a good place. It's not a very impressive roster. But as I studied this roster to come up with my answer to this question, the thing that I kept coming back to was the potential of this vertical passing game. You got a big, strong-armed quarterback that has mobility and size in Justin Fields. And not that this cast of receivers is going to strike fear in you, but they all have speed, they all have ball skills, and they can all get down the field. Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle, Equinemius St. Brown, Velus Jones, their third-round pick this year. A lot of speed to go with the big arm of Justin Fields, and he's a very accurate thrower of the football. So, again, their team needs a lot of work, but I think that vertical passing offense with some potential to run the football with David Montgomery. Now, their offensive line, major question mark. But there is the potency of throwing the ball down the field with Mooney, Pringle, St. Brown, Velus Jones, and Justin Fields. The onus there is on the defense, right? It's not just the secondary like we talked about with the Dolphins. It's about the rush getting there. And you got to play good team defense to avoid that being a problem for you. Week 17, the Cincinnati Bengals on the road, Monday Night Football. To me, the biggest challenge with the Bengals, a really good football team, is their passing offense. It's Joe Burrow at quarterback, throwing the ball to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, a really good receiving threat of the backfield. Accurate quarterback, that handles pressure well. I know he faced a lot of pressure, but he's also like his metrics when he throws the ball under pressure is pretty amazing. And they've found some answers in the offensive line. They signed Lyle Collins and Ted Karras and Alex Kappa to go with Jonah Williams. So they've done some things to help this offensive line. Should be a better unit. But they can really make you pay in the passing game with those three receivers, with Joe Burrow. So I'm not going to put the onus squarely on the secondary. To me, it's the entire defense, right? You got to be able to rush the passer. You got to be able to cover. So it's the back seven, it's the front seven. And then lastly, week 18, the New England Patriots. We already talked about them. It's the rush offense. The onus is on the defensive front seven. So 17 games, 17 challenges. And through that, I called out the offensive line 4 times, the defense 12 times, and then miscellaneous, kind of referring to that Lions game where it's just about matching their competitive toughness, called that out once. And so, to me, this was quite revealing because, to me, for the Bills to reach their goals this year, and that's being the 1 seed in the AFC and winning the AFC East. This is the roadmap. These are the challenges that the Bills have to deal with. And to me, the defense is going to define this season for the Bills. Josh Allen's going to do his thing. The offense is going to score a lot of points. Steph Diggs is going to catch a lot of footballs. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. They're not going to punt a lot. They're going to score. We know what this offense can do. It's the defense. And that makes sense. Like, go back to the Chiefs game in the playoffs. Bills didn't lose that game because they couldn't score. They lost that game because of the defense. Why did they lose to Tampa Bay last year? That was the defense. So when they lost to good teams, came back to the defense, even the Tennessee game, right? The best teams the Bills lost to last year was because of the defense, which is weird because the Bills' defense statistically was so good last year. But obviously, I think they were the beneficiary of playing a lot of bad offenses and a lot of bad quarterbacks. Now, you've added to this defense. You've got Von Miller. You've added to this defensive tackle room and Daquan Jones and Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson is back. You've got more linebacker depth this year. You invested in a cornerback opposite of Trey White and Kyer Elam. I mean, you've done things to help your defense here. And that's where your coaching staff really remains intact. Offensive side of the football, that's where the attrition on the coaching staff has happened. So I think this team, obviously the Bills are going to win a lot of football games. They're going to be a good football team, and a lot of that's because of Josh Allen and the offense. But the ultimate success, their ability to reach their goals, to be the 1 seed, to win the AFC East, it's going to come back to this defense. And I think this was a really interesting way to examine it and get back to it. Now, the offensive line, that's going to be a big deal. I have that down 4 times. 12 times it's defense. 12 times. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was revealing to you. I hope this helps you gain a better perspective of the challenges ahead for the Bills and what components of this football team, of this Bills football team, are going to define the 2022 season. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Tomorrow, Herd Mentality. I've got a fun week prepared later on. I don't want to give it away. But just know tomorrow's Herd Mentality. And from there, I've got some fun concepts already planned out that I think everyone will enjoy. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.